the arc tool, which is really great for creating curves. We have these shape tools, so you can drop in solid shapes. We have a push and pull tool, which I'll get into later on. This guy is an offset tool. He's really useful for when you're drawing lines inside lines. We have the move tool, rotate tool, scale tool, a measuring tool, a tool that I think just drops texts, which you kind of hardly very use in this. We have the paint bucket tool, which is actually very useful for dropping in materials, but we'll get to that probably not in this tutorial. And we have orbit and pan and zoom. So for the zoom in function on this as well, if you have a mouse with a scroll function, you can zoom in and out like that. So for moving around our screen, we're going to use pan quite often. Okay, so he helps you move the camera like this, and then orbit helps you move around like that. Okay, so we're going to go back to our front view, so I'm just going to take the shortcut. Okay, so just really basically, I think for this one we're just going to make a we could just make a wine glass, for instance. Okay, so I will show you how to use some of the other shapes as well, probably after, but the wine glass gives you just a good kind of basic understanding of how you can create a symmetrical 3D shape in this program. So I go to our hover over the origin, which is just here. I click once, okay? So it then extrudes this rectangle, okay? So this rectangle is going to be kind of our drawing pad for the moment. So I'm just going to click about there. So also, once I was selecting and drawing the object out, I could have locked that to the axis. I didn't need to because we're in this parallel projection mode. So I'm just going to hit spacebar again to get back to our normal arrow. So I can select this, okay? So but when you create a shape, you have two different types of ways to select these shapes. So as you can see, there's these thick lines that are around the edge of these pictures. So I can select the lines individually, or I can select the face. Okay, so just to show you what I've dropped in, I'm going to hit O on the keyboard, which is orbit. So that just shows you what this is. So in terms of like why we put that in parallel projection is, if we quickly put that into perspective mode, the same thing, it gives you kind of an overall perspective of the thing. Whereas when we're trying to work flat and draw a little bit more precisely, we want to work in the parallel projection mode, and we'll just put that into front again. Okay, so we have our basic drawing shape. So what we're going to do here is we are going to draw half of our wine glass. Okay, so I'm going to start off just very basically using this pencil tool. Okay, so what's really great about this program is that when you hover over edges and lines, it snaps to them. So I know that I'm not going to miss. Okay, so if you're considering 3D printing stuff, this is really important because you don't want to end up with holes in your models and stuff. So when you do come to click and move these lines and stuff around, you're joining stuff, you're drawing, be conscious of where the start of your lines are going to be. Okay, so I'm gonna actually make this line here. So I'm gonna click from here, and then it brings out a line tool like that. So let's see, I'm just gonna click to release, so then we have a line. So I can carry on drawing from this line. So if I just keep going, But if I don't want to keep going and I'm done with this line, I can hit escape and that comes off, and then we've created a line. Okay, so I'm just going to zoom in. So what's also really great about SketchUp is I can hover over the end of that, and then it usually snaps to points along the way of the axis, because it wants to always work in sync with other points on this program. So we're going to go to the end of this point. We're just going to click and then bring that to the edge. Okay. So so now I want to pan using the pan, this hand at the top. I can zoom in and out just to see what kind of proportions I'm doing. So at the minute we're drawing the foot of the wine glass. Okay, so obviously at the minute it just looks like a weird kind of triangular quadrilaterally thing. So it's not quite looking that great. So we could carry on to draw our wine glass. So just proportionally, I'm gonna just run probably a line from here, maybe outwards. But can you see how that's locked in parallel with that line? So just to click there. So I'm gonna hit escape. So now the reason I'm doing that is I'm just gonna leave a section here for the stem. So I'm trying to make it like semi-proportional. I think I might make like a curvaceous kind of stem just to make it a little bit more interesting. So then top left here again, I'm going to click on this arc tool. So this is really fantastic for drawing lines and curves. You have to be quite careful that it doesn't snap off axis, which is again why we use this parallel projection mode, because sometimes you can be drawing curves and they can be coming off at different angles, and it's just not good for business. So we're gonna just click on this point. As you can see, it gives you this blue arc that comes out, and I think that is kind of relating to that end line, so it makes things very symmetrical. But because from the line that we just created it from, so it wants to make the smoothest line possible coming off of that. But because that's going to be a stem, and the way that we make our wine glasses in the studio, we usually have like an added section of glass in between. So we're just going to click here. But what you can do is once you click, it gives you this option of how you want the glass to look. So, we could go for kind of a Venetian style bowl, or we could do the kind of classic wine glass shape that, you'd get from kind of a machine-made glass, or, rounder. So, if it's a really big bowl. But you're also not limited to just this. So you click again once you decided, but if you're not happy with it, you can go back, you can select that line and hit delete, okay? But what you must be really careful to do is not hit this background, because if I hit delete, that deletes all the face off of that. You can see our foot still has its face. So I'm just gonna hit undo, that was just to show you guys. But if you want to do a more rounded shape, you don't just have to do 2 clicks. So for instance, if I was trying to make a slightly longer curve, I want to control the curve more, I could start my click here, then click off from there again, and then round, and then the blue line at this point really does help you keep it nice and smooth looking, so you don't end up with facets and stuff. Okay, so we've started that line. We're now gonna let's just do a kind of fun stem, just to play around with. So I'm gonna click on this part here, click on that, and can you see how that's snapping now? So when it starts doing that, sometimes you need to zoom in a little closer so that you can control the curvature of it. Okay, so we'll do like a nice kind of curved stem. So at the moment, what's going on is if you hit spacebar, we're back to our selection key, we can start looking at what faces are their own faces and which are still part of this whole rectangle. So